Morning, everybody. Well, hi, this is Will Bowen. 4 minutes late, the best laid plans of mice and men. As you can see, my backdrop doesn't completely fill in the space. It's supposed to. I have actually been streaming live, but I was in the wrong login. I had so many things I was trying to do this morning to really kind of jazz up these daily jump starts, and they just were not working. And one of them now I see is that I didn't have the microphone or the camera set exactly where it should be. And I worked on this for a long time yesterday, which is fine. Gives me something to do. I'll work on it again some more once we're complete this morning. Teddy has been up since 5 o'clock. We went out and played on the beach, didn't we, bud? We dug some holes. So we had a good time. There's nobody out there at 5:30 in the morning, so we go out on the beach and he gets to play. And now I wanted to let him say hello, and then I'm sure he's going to want to lie down and go to sleep or snuggle up with me. I'm very grateful to have you here with me this morning. The reason I'm doing all these enhancements, the new microphone, I've got a new camera coming, the new backdrops. I'm even using a software program, and that's where I ran into problems this morning. Called OBS, which will allow me to put my logo and stuff like that in here. And the reason I'm doing this is that we are getting 2,000 views a day. How about that? 2,000 views a day, and I appreciate it. I think it's because of those of you who are sharing these messages with other people, and I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate that. Jerome, good morning. Glad to see you are here. Today I said that I wanted to talk about what I call mouse taming. And let me show you my statue that I keep over on my altar. This is Lord Ganesha. This is the Hindu God Ganesha. I won't go into his history. You can Google him if you wish. What you'll notice is that right here, if I can figure out which side it's on, there we go, it's on this side, is Ganesha's, there's a mouse. There's a little tiny mouse, and there it is. You can see it now, okay? You'll notice Ganesha has his foot on this mouse. And I want to call today mouse taming because that's the idea and the concept behind Ganesha is. Now, mouse taming means to keep your ego in check. The mouse represents the human ego in Hindu mythology, specifically when it comes to Ganesha. And so the mouse represents the ego. Now, what is the ego? We're not talking about the Sigmund Freud superego, ego, and id. We're talking about a metaphysical or a spiritual concept of the id, the way that Wayne Dyer used it, the way that Eckhart Tolle uses it, Marianne Williamson. So many of you are probably already familiar with this. The idea is, good morning, Michelle is here. I see you are here. Grateful to have you here. The ego, many have said that we are actually two beings inside. We have the highest self and we have the ego. The point is to try and reach as much of the higher self and be as little as we can in the ego. The ego would be the lower self. The higher self would be the higher self. Many have called that the God within, the universal consciousness. Susie, bonjour. Glad to have you here. We are talking this morning about what I'm calling mouse taming because in Hindu mythology, the mouse represents the human ego. Now, some have even said that the ego is an acronym for edging God out. If the higher self is the God within us, the ego is trying to edge God out. I've thought a lot about this, and there's a lot of books on killing the ego and things like that. I don't think we're intended to kill the ego. I think the ego is there because it serves a purpose, just like everything else in our bodies at some point, except maybe the appendix. But at some point, they say that it did serve a purpose. So the ego serves a purpose. What is that purpose? The ego is there to protect us. The ego is actually that fearful side of us, that part of us that watches things to be careful. It is very untrusting. I did a little bit of writing this morning about this, and the ego dwells in the past and in the future, whereas the highest self only dwells in the present. This is why Eckhart Tolle talks about the importance of mindfulness, because when you are being mindful, that means you are being present. then the ego cannot take hold. And that's another reason I encourage you to practice the skill of gratitude, to constantly be saying things in your head for which you are grateful for, because the ego's job is to protect you. So I notice I'm touching my face. Oh my gosh, I'm touching my face. Anyway, the ego's job is to protect you. And so it is always a little skeptical, a little questioning. It's the part of you that gets angry. And I don't know about you, but have you ever noticed that it's easier to be a little sad in the morning when you first wake up, or a little sad at night as you're going to bed? You would think that you would be anticipating a great day, or that you would have been grateful for the day. But what I feel happens is that over time, my higher self starts to shut down so that our ego is actually more in control, because we are most in danger when we're getting up in the mornings or lying down to go to sleep. So our ego is there to protect us. Now, the challenge is that our ego gets out of control. And this is where the negative sides of the human personality come up. I'm trying to use my left hand to hold the dog so he doesn't fall out of my lap, but I'm going to let him take care of himself in that respect. Our ego is there to protect us, and our ego asks 3 questions. I wrote them down. I figured this out a long time ago because I was always trying to figure out what is the basic approach when I'm in my ego self. And the ego self slowly wants to wrest control over you. And that's another reason that I feel like it is there. If we don't have something to be in opposition to, we don't tend to grow. Human beings make their greatest growths during challenging times or after challenging times. Good morning, Vicki. Glad you're here with us. Human beings actually grow best when faced with opposition. I used to do a lot of growing of plants and stuff like that. And one of the things that I found out was that when you're growing tomato plants, you want to make sure that they're getting a good breeze on them, because the breeze actually causes the plant to get stronger because it's resisting. If you think about a plane taking off, a plane must have resistance against the wings to take off. No resistance, no flight. Stalling, when a plane actually stalls, that's when there's no resistance and the plane begins to drop. And the way you get out of a stall, I know this because I was a pilot for many years, you actually lean the plane forward so there is resistance, and you can then sensibly take off if you've got enough space. So the ego is there to provide resistance in our own minds, which calls up our higher selves. I know that it sounds counterintuitive, but I truly believe that our egos serve a purpose. Many people, again, as I've said, are against the ego and talk and say that it is not something that is beneficial. I truly think that it is. It provides the resistance in our life so that we can truly find out who and what we really are. So I said that the ego always asks 3 questions. I'm pretty sure I know them since I wrote them and came up with them, but I want to make sure I'm quoting them correctly for you this morning. First and foremost, the ego is asking, what's going wrong? What's going wrong? What's going wrong? That's why I believe that complaining is an ego-based process. People who are constantly complaining tend to stay in their egos, and people who stay in their ego tend to complain more constantly. It's a loop that you get caught in. The very asking of that question, one of the things that I've learned from Tony Robbins is that the way you control a person's mind is through asking questions. If you ask a person a question, then you tend to engage their mind. That's why when I'm speaking, and as most of you know, I speak professionally about the complaint-free world almost all the time. So when I'm speaking, I will often say, does that make sense? Are you with me? Tell me if that's true for you, etc. I ask questions. So the ego is asking questions, saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And let me tell you, there is always something wrong. There is always something to focus on that is wrong. As I got up this morning really early and I cleaned my place because, you know, I've been here by myself for several days and I really wanted things nice and neat, and cleaned all the counters and everything like that. And as I was doing that, I got everything finished to where it looked really pristine, and I was quite proud of my home. And then as I was walking through, I went, I missed that. I missed that. And that is an observation, of course, I want to make when I'm cleaning. But what I'm saying is that the ego is always asking, what is wrong? Janelle, good morning. Glad you are here. Vicky, we need to work with it and not run from it. Well, I'm going to give you some actual tips in just a minute on how to harness that ego. Because as I said, the way to control the human mind is through questions. So I'm going to give you some better questions. Good morning, Gail. Glad to see you are here and you are greeting Vicky. That is very cool. So the ego asks, what is going wrong? And once it's ascertained what is wrong, the ego asks, who can I blame? So question number one, the ego asks is, what's going wrong? Question number two, the ego asks is, who can I blame? The ego must always affix blame, and sometimes the ego will attack itself, ourselves. It will attack us. It will say, because the first thing it'll do is it'll go, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. And then when logic does not support any of those suppositions that it's someone else's fault, the ego goes, oh, that's right. I'm a piece of crap. I'm the one. It's me. It's my fault. The ego wants to blame someone, anyone, and it will blame us simply to try and maintain control. So first question it asks is, what's going wrong? The second question the ego always asks is, who can I blame? And the third question the ego asks, unrelated typically to those first two questions. Those are related. What's going wrong and who can I blame? The other question the ego is constantly asking is, what can I get? What can I get? Now I want more stuff. We all do. You know, I moved down here to the Keys. I want to buy a boat, things like that. It's good to look forward to something. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. The power of moving through this coronavirus quarantine by having something to look forward to. So be sure and share the event with other people and to invite them. But the ego is looking forward to more. What can I get? What can I get? What advantage can I take in this situation? It is the ego that drives people when they're in business negotiations to always try and get their unfair share. That's why negotiations have become basically a competition. You ask for way more, I ask for way more, and hopefully we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. The people who I find really are very successful in business, and this is straight out of How to Win Friends and Influence People, are the ones who look at it from the other person's point of view and try to figure out how to help the other person get what they want, such that we ultimately get what we want. But the ego approaches it first and foremost with, how can I get what I want? I need to get what I want. That's what matters. And they're always trying to take what I want. That's the ego. The ego is based in fear. So the ego always asks, what's going wrong? Which often leads to complaining. Who can I blame? Which also reinforces complaining. And then the other thing that the ego always wants is, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? If the ego sees a cake that's been cut up into 9 slices or 10 slices or 12 slices, the ego, if you're a big cake person, is going to go, I hope I get the biggest slice. I need that biggest slice. I want that biggest slice. Okay? So those are the 3 questions the ego asks. What's going wrong? Who can I blame? And what can I get? So what do we do to stay in our highest self? If the mind is controlled by questions, how do we turn it on its head to stay in our highest self? We flip those questions by asking the polar opposite. It's what we talked about 2 days ago on Sunday. It is the opposite of complaining. It is the opposite of negativity. And I'll tell you, as soon as I say good morning to Christine Wolf, good to see you. Kim, good morning. Thank you for the smile and words of wisdom. My pleasure. Linda, good morning. Gail, glad you are here. And Debbie, thank you so much for you, those of you who are here. And those of you who are watching this later, I announced earlier that we're getting 2,000 views a day. Hence the contacts, not glasses, the new background I'm still working on, and I've got some new software and a camera that are coming in. So what are the questions that the higher self asks? What can you ask during the time of the coronavirus that will keep you in your highest self? I was doing an interview yesterday for one of my speaking clients. And one of the things that they're doing, which I think is really cool, which is actually driven by this staying at home, is months before the speech, they're doing a Facebook Live with all of the keynote speakers. And they asked me, what can you do? And I shared with them these 3 secrets. Here we go. Question number 1. What's going right? There's that gratitude again. What's going right? What's going well? What's going well? What's going right? I teach this in my speeches. What's going well? Keep asking yourself, what is going right? Instead of what is going wrong. What's going right? What's going well? Same question, okay? Just paraphrase it, because sometimes what's going right doesn't work perfectly. What am I grateful for? Ask yourself what's going right, and then ask yourself, and this follows along with the question the ego asks, but turning it around, and that is, who can I thank? It doesn't have to be specifically for what's going right. For example, my new cell phone case arrived the other day, I was grateful for that. Now, I could ask myself, who can I thank? And that's true. Or who can I thank in general? In other words, who can I express gratitude to? The best way to get out of your ego is to express gratitude to someone else. I noticed in all of my study of Mr. Rogers, one of the things he would often say is, thank you for telling me that. When people would say something nice or even sometimes critical, thank you for telling me that. Or if someone showed him something, thank you for showing me that. And I've begun to adopt that. When someone shares something with me, like something from their childhood, I'm trying to develop the habit, it's a habit, of constantly saying, thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for sharing that with me, etc. Debbie, good morning. Glad to see you're here from Indianapolis. Speaking of my speaking career, I think I've spoken more in Indianapolis than anywhere else, and I think I've got another one coming up. Anyway, so the questions to keep yourself in the higher self. Number 1, what's going right? Number 2, who can I thank? And do you remember the third question the ego asks so that we can turn it on its head? That's right. The third question the ego always asks is, what can I get? The question the higher self always asks is, what can I give? What can I give? What can I give? These daily jump starts are out of my desire to give. You'll notice there's no commercial in them when I put them on YouTube rather. I don't put advertising because I want these to be a gift. I want these to be my contribution. Getting up every morning and speaking for about 20 to 25 minutes is a gift that I have. And someone asked, how in the world are you able to do that? Well, I just saw a friend of mine joined, and I want to acknowledge him here in a second. But I've spoken in churches for 25 years. I've got 25 years of research and reading books, and it's all floating around in my brain, and I just want to share that. I just want to share that with you and help you during this difficult time. I was talking to my therapist yesterday. Oh my gosh. I don't know what happened just then. Something just happened. I presume you can all still see me. Yes, it looks like we're still recording. Don't know why. Anyway, I was talking to my therapist yesterday, and she said that everyone right now is in survival mode. Everyone is in survival mode. And so the hardest part right now is not what's going on outside of us. The hardest part of right now is what's going on inside of us. The hardest part is that ego is trying to get more and more in control. And the ego loves fear and flight mode. The ego loves survival. So I want to say good afternoon to Tammy Rusmanson and that friend of mine who joined. is my good friend Jeff Linhart. Talk about timing. I'm going to come back to Jeff Linhart. Carol, good morning from Lima, Peru. So glad to have you. Don't remember seeing you here before. That's great. Muriel, great to have you here. I know Muriel is part of our Complaint-Free Life program, and Linda is thanking me. Jeff Linhart is one of the happiest people I know, and he's probably sitting there going, I just tuned into this. I had no idea you were going to talk about me. But I have never met a person who gives more than Jeff Linhart. Jeff is always doing something for a charity. Jeff is always doing something for his community. Des Moines, Iowa is a much better place for Jeff Linhart. Jeff was one of the people that brought me there to speak. And Jeff is just relentless in what can I give, what can I give, what can I give. So Jeff is constantly asking himself that question to keep himself in his higher self. And you know what I realize? I keep looking at the screen, and I apologize for that. I think that's very normal. I'm going to work on looking at the camera. The question that Jeff asks himself, the question that is going to get us through this is, what can I give? And that ties in so many of my previous JumpStarts about reaching out to other people, giving to other people in this time, finding ways to contribute to others. And they're there. They are absolutely there. Debbie says she's a triage RN. I can second that. Our patients are so frightened, and they are definitely in survival mode. You know, Debbie, I totally get that. And it's more universal than that. Those of us who are not patients are frightened of becoming patients. It's that fear of the fear, which is always the thing that triggers the phobia and makes things worse. So I totally get it, Debbie. I just want you to know that we are very afraid as well. And Debbie, I want you to take good care of yourself. Please do everything you can. Vicki says, I'm doing great. Great. So I'm glad that I'm doing great. I'm just excited to have this opportunity to be with you every morning. I find myself getting up earlier and earlier. I find myself putting more and more into this. And like I said, I want to thank you for sharing this. To go from 0 to 2,000 views a day in about 10 days, that's awesome, Possum. And it's because of you. So let me summarize, and then I'm going to let you go about doing what I've actually shared with you today. And that is, number one, the ego is always asking 3 questions. What's going wrong? Who can I blame? And what can I get? And I mean, can't you just see this ego doing that? Imagine some sort of a disgruntled cartoon. You know, this would be Yosemite Sam in the Bugs Bunny arena. You know, what's going wrong? Who can I blame? And what can I get out of the situation? And the ego is the maybe Deepak Chopra. I won't even attempt to do his voice. But the ego would ask, what's going right? Who can I thank? And what can I give? And that's what we need to keep ourselves healthy and happy and thriving during this time of separation. And listen, I want to put a plug one more time in for my Complaint-Free Life program. I see so many of you signing up during this time, and so many of you who are part of this are also part of it. We do a 30-minute webinar every week. We do a daily check-in with everybody. It's a whole community thing. So if you'd like to check that out, it's complaintfreelife.com. Let's see. Sherry Green says, just received your book, Complaint-Free World, that my daughter-in-law are going to read together. So glad you could find you on Facebook Live. That is so cool. We are still shipping books and bracelets. The sheltered workshop that was sending out everything closed with all of our inventory inside. And so my daughter, Amelia, got in touch with the owner of the place. They opened it up, let her take boxes of stuff. And now, in addition to everything else she does, she's still sending out books and bracelets. So I have 5 books I've written. We have them all. We have complaint-free bracelets. We have the Complaint-Free Life program. And all of my books are available on Audible, except for the daily devotional, To You Love God. So I just bring that up if you're looking for something to do while you're here. The most important thing to do is to be with us tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how your own brain is working against you in this isolation time. Your prefrontal cortex is working against you and causing your ego to take charge even more than it should. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And thank you again for sharing these videos with so many people. I look forward to our online positive community continuing to grow. You have a great day. Enjoy today, and I'll see you tomorrow along with Teddy. Bye-bye.